My name is Joshua, and I died for 15 minutes. When I crossed over to the other side, I met Jesus, and what he showed me changed the way I will eat, pray, and live for the rest of my life. I want to tell you my story tonight, not to entertain you, but to warn you and to bless you, because I believe some of you needed to hear this before you sat down at your next meal. I am 55 years old. I was born in a small town, raised by a mother who prayed over every pot on the stove, but somewhere along the way, between college and career, between marriage and mortgage, between success and stress, I stopped praying before I ate. It seemed like such a small thing to let go of. Nobody warned me it was small the way a crack in a dam is small. I want you to understand who I was before that day. I was a businessman. I traveled constantly. I ate in airports. I ate in my car. I ate standing over the kitchen counter at 11 at night after closing a deal. Food had become fuel to me, nothing more. I used to bow my head as a boy. My mother taught me to say, "Lord, bless this food to the nourishment of our bodies." But by the time I was 55, I hadn't said that prayer in probably 20 years. I told myself I was too busy. I told myself God understood. I told myself a lot of things that sounded reasonable and were completely wrong. On the day everything changed, I was sitting in my kitchen, eating a sandwich, scrolling through emails, not even tasting what I was eating. My chest started to feel tight. I thought it was stress. Then the tightness became a fist closing around my heart, and then it became a fire spreading down my left arm, and then the room started to spin, and then nothing. My wife found me on the kitchen floor. She told me later that I had no pulse for what the paramedics estimated was around 15 minutes before they got a rhythm back in the ambulance. 15 minutes. Do you understand what that means? Doctors will tell you the brain begins to die within minutes without oxygen. 15 minutes should have left me, if I survived at all, a shell of the man I was. That's not what happened. And I believe the reason is because I wasn't just lying on that floor. I was somewhere else entirely. The moment my heart stopped, I did not experience darkness. I want to be very clear about this because I know some of you are skeptics, and I used to be one too. I did not experience nothing. I experienced a release, like stepping out of a heavy, wet coat I didn't know I was wearing. The pain in my chest vanished instantly, and then I was standing, though I don't know if standing is even the right word, because I don't believe I had legs in the way you're picturing, in a place of light. Not light like the sun, blinding and hot. Light like it was made of peace. Light you could feel in your chest like a low, steady hum of love. I turned, and there he was. I don't need to describe every detail of his appearance to you, because I don't think it's the point. What I need you to understand is what it felt like to stand in front of him. I have shaken hands with senators. I have sat across from billionaires at negotiating tables. I have stood on stages in front of thousands of people, and none of it, prepared me for what it feels like to be fully known and fully loved in the same instant. He knew everything about me. Every skipped prayer, every impatient word to my wife, every meal I had eaten in a hurry, resentful, distracted, ungrateful. And he looked at me the way my mother used to look at me when I was small and had scraped my knee, not with anger, but with an aching, patient tenderness that broke something open in my chest. He said my name, just my name, Joshua, and I fell down, though I don't think I had knees to fall on. I wept, though I don't think I had eyes to weep with. Something in me, the real me, the me underneath 55 years of hurry and pride, collapsed in front of him. He didn't scold me. I want you to hear that clearly, because so many people are afraid that if they ever stood before God, he would list their failures like a prosecutor reading charges. That is not what happened. He lifted me up. I felt it, an actual lifting, gentle as a father lifting a toddler from the floor. And he said, "Joshua, I want to show you something." And that's when the vision began. I found myself looking at scenes, one after another, like windows opening in the light around me. The first scene was a family, a mother, a father, 3 children, sitting around a dinner table in what looked like an ordinary American home, steam rising off a roast chicken, bread in a basket. And they ate. They just ate. No one bowed a head. No one paused. The father was on his phone, The teenage daughter had earbuds in. The mother was staring blankly at the wall, exhausted. It was food eaten in total silence of the spirit, if that makes sense to you. Full mouths and empty hearts. And Jesus said something to me that I will never forget as long as I live, however long that turns out to be. He said, "Every meal is an altar, Joshua, and every altar that is not surrendered to me becomes an altar to something else." I didn't understand at first. I said, or thought, because I don't know if I spoke, "Lord, it's just food. It's just dinner." And he turned to me with such gentleness, but also such sorrow, and he said, "Nothing is just anything in a world I created for communion with you. I gave you food not only to sustain your body, but to remind you, 3 times a day if you let it, that you are dependent on me for every single breath. When you forget to thank me for the meal, you are training your soul to forget that you need me at all." He showed me another scene. A young man, alone in a small apartment, eating fast food out of the bag, standing at his counter, scrolling on his phone just like I used to. And I saw, this is hard to explain, but I saw something like a fog settle over him as he ate. Not evil exactly, just absence, a hollowness expanding in the room. Jesus said, "He does not know he is lonely because he never learned to invite me into the room." Every unblessed meal is a door left unopened. I am always standing at that door, Joshua. Always. But I do not force my way in. I began to weep again, because I saw myself in every scene. I saw myself at my own desk, eating that sandwich, scrolling through emails, not once considering that the food in front of me was a gift, that the hands that grew the wheat and raised the chicken and drove the truck to the store were part of a chain of provision that stretched all the way back to his hands, his son, his reign, his mercy. Then the vision shifted, and I saw something different, something that gave me hope, and I want to share that with you too, because this testimony isn't meant to leave you in despair. I saw a small kitchen, humble, nothing fancy, cracked linoleum floor, and an elderly woman sitting alone at her table with a simple bowl of soup. And she bowed her head. She was alone, no family around her, maybe a widow, maybe forgotten by the world. But she folded her hands and she said, out loud, "Lord, thank you for this food, and thank you for another day to know you." And I watched. Jesus let me watch, as the light in that room changed. It's the only way I can describe it. The light thickened, brightened, wrapped around her like arms. Jesus said, "She is never alone. She never eats alone. Every meal she takes with me, and I take it with her." I asked him, "Lord, why does it matter so much? Why does something as small as a prayer before a meal carry this much weight?" And he said something to me that I have turned over in my mind every single day since I came back. He said, "Joshua, I am not a God who is far off, needing grand gestures to notice you. I am a God who is near, waiting for small ones. Prayer before a meal is not a magic formula. It is not a transaction where you say words and I release a blessing like a vending machine. It is a relationship. It is you, in the middle of your hurried day, choosing to remember me before you nourish your body. And in that remembering, you invite me into the ordinary moments of your life, not just the emergencies. Most people only call on me when they are dying, Joshua. You are showing me right now what it looks like when someone finally remembers me while they are still living. That hit me harder than anything else that day. Harder than the light, harder than the peace. Because it was true. I had prayed plenty in my life. When my father was in the hospital, when my business almost collapsed, when my son was born 3 weeks early, and we didn't know if he'd make it. I knew how to pray in crisis. I had forgotten how to pray in the ordinary. And Jesus was showing me that the ordinary moments, repeated day after day, shape a soul far more than the dramatic ones. He showed me one more scene, and this one I will carry with me until the day I actually do leave this earth for good. I saw a table, a great table, longer than any table I had ever seen, stretching further than my eyes could track, and it was full of people from every nation, every color, every era of history, all eating together, all radiant, all at peace. And Jesus stood at the head of that table, and he said, "This is what I am preparing, Joshua. A table where every meal is communion, where nothing is eaten in isolation, or hurry, or ingratitude. I showed you the broken tables of earth so that you would hunger, not just for food, but for this one, for me. I asked him, trembling, Lord, am I going to stay? Am I going to sit at this table? And he smiled. And I want you to know, the warmth of that smile is something I have chased in every worship service, every quiet morning prayer, every moment of stillness since I came back, and I have never fully recaptured it, though I believe I will again one day. And he said, Not yet, Joshua. Go back. Tell them what you saw. Tell them to stop eating like orphans and start eating like children who know their father provided the meal. And then I was falling, no, rising, or maybe both. I honestly cannot describe the sensation, and the next thing I knew, there was pain in my chest again, and bright fluorescent light, and a paramedic's face inches from mine, and the sound of my wife screaming my name, and I understood I was back in my body, back on the kitchen floor, back in the world of hurry and deadlines and unpaused meals. I spent 4 days in the hospital. The doctors called it a medical miracle that I had no significant brain damage after that long without a pulse. They used words like unusual and remarkable, and we don't have a good explanation for this. I have my own explanation. I believe Jesus was not finished with me. I believe he sent me back specifically to tell you what I am telling you right now. Since that day, I have not eaten a single meal without praying first. Not one. Not at a restaurant, not on an airplane, not standing at a counter at midnight after a long flight. And I want to tell you, it is not about superstition. It is not about believing that if I skip a prayer, something bad will happen to me. Some curse will fall on my food. That is not what this is about. And I don't want anyone walking away from tonight thinking I'm telling you God is going to punish you for eating a sandwich in silence. That's not the message. The message is this: every meal is an invitation. Every single time you sit down to eat, whether it's a feast with your whole family or a granola bar alone in your car between meetings, you are being handed a small, quiet moment to remember that you are not self-sufficient. You did not create the sun that grew the wheat. You did not create the rain that watered the field. You did not create your own beating heart that allows you to chew and swallow and digest and live. Every meal is proof that you are sustained by something outside of yourself, and prayer is simply the act of acknowledging the sustainer. I think about that lonely widow with her bowl of soup more than almost anything else from that day, because she had every reason to eat in bitterness. She had every reason to eat in silence, in grief, in resentment for a life that didn't go the way she planned. And instead, she chose gratitude. She chose communion, and Jesus told me she was never alone. I want that for every person listening to me tonight. I want you to know that no matter what your table looks like, whether it's crowded with a big loud family or achingly empty except for you, he is willing to sit there with you if you simply ask him to. I also think about that young man with his fast food bag and his empty apartment, and how a fog settled over that room, not because Jesus was punishing him, but because we live in a world where the enemy of our souls delights in convincing us that the ordinary moments don't matter, that faith is only for Sundays, that prayer is only for crises. I believe with everything in me that this is one of the great quiet tragedies of our modern life, that we have compartmentalized God into an hour on the weekend and shut him out of the thousands of small moments that actually make up the fabric of our days. Meals are one of those moments. Maybe one of the most important, because we do it 2 or 3 times a day, every day for our entire lives. That is thousands upon thousands of invitations we either extend to God or withhold from him. My wife tells me I'm a different man since I came back. She says I'm more patient. She says I actually look at her when she talks now instead of glancing at my phone. She says dinner in our house has become the best part of the day instead of something we rush through to get to the television or our emails. My kids, grown now, with families of their own, tell me their father finally seems at peace after decades of chasing more. I believe all of that started with something as small as bowing my head before a sandwich. I know some of you hearing this are wondering if I really died, if I really saw what I say I saw, if this is real, or if it was just my dying brain manufacturing a comforting story. I understand that skepticism. I lived with it myself for years before this happened to me. I was the kind of man who needed proof, who trusted spreadsheets more than scripture. All I can tell you is what I experienced, and I can tell you that whatever else was happening in my brain that day, the change in my heart since then has been undeniable, measurable, visible to everyone who knows me. If a dying brain can produce that kind of lasting transformation in a 55-year-old man set in his ways, then I don't know what to call that except a miracle. So here is what I want to leave you with tonight. The next time you sit down at a table, whether it's a holiday feast or a lonely bowl of cereal at 6 in the morning before work, I want you to pause. Just for a moment, I want you to remember that the meal in front of you did not appear by accident, that your next breath is not guaranteed, that the God of the universe is not too big or too busy to care about something as small as your lunch. Bow your head, say his name, thank him. It doesn't have to be eloquent. It doesn't have to be long. My mother's prayer was 8 words long, and I believe those 8 words shaped the trajectory of my soul more than any sermon I've ever heard. Lord, bless this food to the nourishment of our bodies. Say it and mean it, and watch what begins to change in you. Not overnight, not in some dramatic flash of light like I experienced, but slowly, meal by meal, day by day, the way a life is actually transformed. I didn't need to die to learn that lesson. None of you do either. I'm telling you now, while you're still breathing, still sitting at your table, still holding your fork in your hand, don't wait until you're standing in front of him to remember to thank him. My name is Joshua. I died for 15 minutes, and Jesus gave me my life back so I could tell you this one simple thing: never eat alone again. He is waiting at every table you will ever sit at. All you have to do is bow your head and invite him in. Thank you for listening to my story tonight. Go home, sit down at your table, and pray.